how do you stay in shape, man? Your genetics load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. What the heck do we do when it comes to getting solid information for our health and longevity of ourselves and our families? That which is meant to protect us is actually weakening us. Are we taking supplements, just creating expensive pee? Well, beautiful, man. Well, thank you for doing this, dude.
Of course, man. It's my pleasure, man.
These crazy ideas I come up with. A podcast in the sauna. It was an idea I had maybe 2 years ago. Here we are.
Yeah, man. You made it work. You know, you got some melt-proof equipment,
man.
you know? It's awesome, man.
Do you sauna much?
Man, I wish I did more. You know, like we have one, but you know, the voltage isn't correct. We got to get that fixed. But you know, I do more of the cold plunging. Than the sauna right now. But I do spend a lot of time just out in the sun. You know, that's why we came here.
Yeah.
You know.
In the sun. Why do you spend a lot of time in the sun?
I mean, it's one of the key ingredients for life on Earth. You know, it's such a special thing. And, you know, for me, of course, just being very science driven, just looking at all of the mental and physiological benefits, you know, it's one of the catalyst for building your sex hormones, for example. You know, that pathway with the cholesterol getting converted over, you know, it's so fascinating. But, you know, I kind of did a dictation on it a little while ago. You know, I'm talking about vitamin D, right? So that vitamin D pathway. And it's not just the sun, it's the interaction with our organs, right? So because what it does is it creates like a precursor, right? Interacting with cholesterol in our system. This sunlight, this photosynthesis process, like we're kind of like a plant that got up and walked around, you know? And but then it's getting shuttled to, you know, there's a conversion that happens with your liver. There's a conversion that happens with your kidneys. So we can get all the sun that we want to, but if our organs aren't healthy, we're going to be lacking in being able to build these really important complex compounds that really create vitality. You know what I mean? But so since I'm stacking conditions with my nutrition,
you take vitamin D as well? Supplement? Or
no,
just get it from
I don't really need to.
Or just fish or like the sun? And
yeah, I mean, of course, there's some plant sources as well. It's D2 though. It's not D3 if we're talking about like, you know, mushrooms or something like that. Because you know, going through these I've experimented oftentimes at least a year with just about any nutrition protocol you can imagine. You know, I've been in this field for 20 years. And so, you know, looking for it through a vegan vegetarian lens, you know, I was like, okay, I'll do the mushrooms. But again, it doesn't matter if your organs aren't healthy to do that conversion, right? From the D2 to go to D3. So, but yeah, we can find it there. There is kind of an interesting source with plants, but predominantly, yeah, you're gonna look for things that kind of resemble the sun. You know, like an egg yolk, for example. You know, it just might have some of those compounds you're looking for in regards to like vitamin D. But vitamin D doesn't work in a vacuum. And that's part of the problem I have with, you know, going straight for a isolated supplement version of something.
Yeah. Thank you again for being here. I'm such a fan of your work in so many ways. You know, you're science driven. You know, you don't run away from the science. You're open-minded. You have this high ethical standard and moral compass, and you keep things fun. You're a storyteller and a little bit of a comedian too. I heard a joke you had said on some podcast. You were saying we were talking about fat. People think eating fat makes you fat. That's like saying eating blueberries would make you blue. And I laughed entirely too much from that joke. But it's hilarious. You just have such a unique lane. And I'm so honored to have you here. I'm curious though, what was the catalyst inside of your story that got you into health and wanting to heal people?
Well, you just said it, man. It was creating an inroads, you know. We're existing in science. Like science is just happening. We are a part of science. We're a part of nature. And it's a language to describe things, right? And so it's just an awareness of what's happening versus kind of being ignorant to all that's going on and your place in it all. And so, of course, like that, I had science on mute. You know, I had my connection to life and to nature on mute. And as a result, my health, you know, and pretty much everybody in my family had some form of a chronic disease, which is not abnormal, by the way. The CDC just published new data. 60% of Americans have at least one chronic debilitating illness. 40% have 2 or more, right? So that's the state that we're in right now. And over 70% of our citizens are now overweight or obese. And I saw this highlighted in my family in particular, with probably about 80% of my family members being obese. So when I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with a so-called incurable degenerative disc disease. And I had degenerative bone disease as well. So my bones were deteriorating. So much so that at track practice at Lafayette High School in St. Louis, shout out to everybody in St. Louis.
Yes, sir.
I was doing a 200-meter time trial and my hip broke. So my iliac crest and my hip just broke off just from running.
Wow.
And I didn't fall. It wasn't a trauma. It was just my body was so brittle. And so my disposition or my genetic, and by the way, talking with the person who really pushed that into our popular lexicon, the term epigenetics, epi meaning above, genetic meaning control, is Dr. Bruce Lipton. And
yeah, I know him well, good friend, biology of belief.
And he shared with me in a conversation and talking about, because we believe that we have genes for diseases. And he was like, whoa, there aren't any genes for diseases, Shawn. Be very, very careful in your language. And of course, he's like, there are a tiny fraction of true genetic defects. But for the most part, we're talking about, for example, if we say we have a genetic predisposition towards having diabetes, right? What that is, we're talking specifically about type 2 diabetes. Let's just start here. With type 2 diabetes, we have a condition where there was an onset of it. It used to be called adult onset diabetes, right? You weren't born with that condition. Something happened and it created an expression or manifestation of the disease. And so what it is your genes are getting read differently to help your body to continue functioning under unideal circumstances, right? And so the unideal circumstance is a body that was never designed to associate with so much abnormal sugar, right? So 1900s, average Westerner is consuming 4 to 6 pounds of sugar, right? So just before that, late 1800s. Today, we're talking about
a year, 4 to 6 pounds a year.
A year, annually. And today, we're talking about somewhere in the ballpark of 70 pounds of added sugar. We're talking added, not the naturally occurring sugar in addition. That will put the average person over 100 pounds of sugar consumed every year.
Wow.
And so with that amount of sugar and the impact that it has on your liver and your insulin and insulin sensitivity and all these things, your body is going to make intelligent adjustments to keep you alive under those unideal circumstances. So it's not that your genes cause the disease. Matter of fact, we haven't found any genes that cause a disease. We found genes associated with diseases, but they're not causative of diseases. And that's part of the problem. Even recently we had, somebody who's a so-called health official saying that, obesity epidemic, in particular with children, this is a result of genetics. And it's so, at this point, 2023, as much as we know now, to say something like that is so negligent and it's disempowering. It's framed in a way to be empowering because it's like, it's making it not your fault.
Yeah.
And we don't want to create this kind of shame culture. But if we don't equip people with the knowledge of how did this expression actually happen, because your genes didn't do this to you, there's certain epigenetic controllers. And one of the things we could talk about today, there's epicaloric controllers as well, how your body handles calories that you consume that are going to determine how your body is going to be expressed. Because if it was truly a genetic problem, because childhood obesity has tripled in the last 30 to 40 years, tripled. If it was genetic, we would have been like this. Something happened, because we're talking about a sentence in the grand scheme of human evolution. It's only been a sentence where we have this high rate of obesity, in particular with children, right? All this other time, we weren't like this. So if it was evolution takes time, and so to circle it back to my story and how this kind of catalyzed me, pain is a good teacher.
Best.
It's a fantastic teacher.